Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Case for Safety podcast. Appreciate you being with us today for a conversation about AI and EHS. This is, we've been talking about a lot for the past year or so, but we'll always want to make sure we have the latest and greatest information out there for safety pros to use at their workplaces. And here to get us up to speed, I'm very happy to welcome Arianna Howard. Arianna is an EHS technology consultant and managing partner and co-founder of Syncra Group and leader of ASSP's AI and Safety Standards-Based User Group. Arianna, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Scott. Happy to be here.
Excited for the conversation. A lot of really exciting things going on with AI in the industry, and always interesting to talk about. But to start things off, I thought we could kind of look at the 10,000 foot view of where we are now. When you look at where we sit today and the impact that AI is having in EHS, what comes to mind?
I think it's everywhere, right? You can't go to a conference, you can't open LinkedIn, you can't open an email, you can't look at a product without hearing about AI, whether that's at the organizational level, just within your domain. I mean, everywhere you look, turn, Spotify, everything, everyone is talking about it. I think that there's a big paradox right now between what we should be doing and what we're actually capable of doing right now. Companies are excited. They're investing in training. I'm doing a lot of kind of uplift, AI uplift and coaching right now. And I think it's really interesting to hear what people are talking about versus kind of where reality actually sits, either from a capability standpoint or just data, right? I know we talk a lot about data quality. I'm sure we'll get into that. Sure. But we are starting to see some trends. I think most companies, regardless of the size that you'll talk to, a lot of companies are starting outside of EHS with, company level GPTs where their programs and processes and things are getting uploaded. And then you still see, I would say, the safety domain kind of lagging a little bit behind. You definitely see some champions emerging, some power users that are really starting to start that conversation or saying like, hey guys, we need to make sure we're in the room when these things are being discussed. But it is changing the way that we do work. It's changing the way that we think about our work, how we implement processes. And we're not just saying like, let's automate step 1 to step 4. It's, do we need step 1 and step 4? How are we doing that? So we're definitely still in that assistive AI era. I wouldn't say, I know we hear a lot about autonomy. I have truly not seen that come to life yet in a practical sense. So I think we know we should be doing something. We're just not maybe exactly sure what, or what everyone else is doing.
Perfect segue into my next question. With those conversations you're having right now, what are the problems safety leaders are trying to solve, and how often is AI the right tool for what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I always say that AI. I'm happy to take it as an open door conversation because I work across the spectrum of EHS technology, digital strategy, data centralization. I've implemented pretty much every major system that most EHS professionals tend to work in when they're buying something off the shelf. We've worked with companies that are building their own, which has become a lot more common in the age of AI. And I think we, as humans, think like AI is supposed to make us like quicker, faster, smarter. It's supposed to enable us, but we're not really. We're not rethinking our process, right? I call it shifting left. We want to plug in AI in a place where we maybe don't like doing that thing, and we're not taking a look at how that work actually gets done. So I think we talk about black line, blue line, and work as done versus work as imagined. And there's, regardless whether technology is at play or not, there's definitely a gap between those. And until we kind of take a step back and evaluate what that looks like, how does that work actually get done on that line or out in the field with real people and real humans, layering AI on top of that may create some efficiencies, but it is not an end-all be-all solution. It actually will just do the opposite, and it will exacerbate whatever gaps in that process already exist. And you want to, AI is going to create more data, especially when you're looking at physical AI or computer vision, sensors, wearables, things like that. Now you've I mean, 100, 1,000 times X the amount of data that you have. And are you actually ready to address that? Do you have the resources to address that? So it starts to open up a lot of conversations. I feel very strongly about a problem first, tech second approach. And AI is no different than any other technology, right? You're going to go buy a thing that you slap on someone's arm to do what? Right? What problem are we solving? Do we have MSDs? Do we have ergonomic issues? Do we want to make it easier to report? And, we click a button and report things. Like, what is the actual problem we're trying to solve? And I think if we looked at AI with that kind of lens versus shiny new object syndrome, which we're all prone to, we would have a different perspective. And I have some stories around how we're doing that with some real clients, but it's been really. People are always surprised when the tech person is saying like, I don't really know if tech's actually going to fix this problem. So, I think we try to use it as a Band-Aid, and it's not, it will rip apart at some point.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. What are, some of those examples you've seen or, organizations are, reaching for AI, AI is going to fix this problem when, there are other underlying issues, that they need to get at first before just thinking AI is going to solve their problem.
Yeah, I have two examples, and it's mostly to try to speak to the spectrum. So I work with a lot of hard tech, high growth startups. I spent about 5 years at Rivian Automotive, so it was a big startup. And a lot of my ex-colleagues have gone on to become safety directors, VPs, leaders at other high growth startups. So you're talking about lean teams of 1 to 5 safety people, usually solo, and they typically, it's great because we can start with like what a foundational safety management system may look like. But we're talking about safety management system across the board, right? So when we're trying to implement something very familiar, like an incident management platform, and we always start with, in that requirements design phase, okay, how do you report incidents? What's expected? Who's expected to respond? How long is the response supposed to take? What do those notifications look like? Those are all very common questions that come up in design workshops for software. And a lot of that is just not figured out yet, right? We have been like working through Teams and phone calls. And so that is a part of the learning process. But I have also seen, but move up market to mid-market enterprise where these systems maybe have been established for 10 or 12 years. And that tends to be where we go for the solution first. And let's take one of my clients, a huge enterprise client, 80,000 employees, over 150, subsidiaries. And one of the a way that we've worked through this problem first, tech second approach is let's pick a problem and then let's try to solve it. And that problem was from their safety leadership, we want to stop killing people in the roads, right? Okay, that's a problem statement. But is it? So how do we want to stop killing? When is that happening? Is it during the day? Is it at night? Is it during inclement weather? Is it in urban areas? Is it in rural areas? So you start to ask questions. Where would you normally go to get that, right? The data. So then we open up the data and we realize that 1, maybe 3 out of over 150 companies have even been capturing data to answer those questions. And so we go back to the basics, right? We go back to the team that manages the system and say, we got to start capturing this data because we can't even define a problem statement, right? And then you start doing different ways. So if you can't go back to your raw data, then what do? You go learn from the people on the ground. So you go do field observations, you go talk to people. And so we've worked on that project for over 5 months. And now we've kind of gotten to a place where we can say, here are the 8 different sets of problems. Some can be solved internally, some require legislative input, some require the industry coming together to solve, and then you can move forward, with solving that. And I would say maybe 2 out of those 8 problem statements may have anything to do with technology. But imagine the difference between approaching it with like, we need an AI app to teach people how to do traffic control plans. Do we? Is that actually the problem, or is the problem that we didn't actually know about? We don't know about 90% of our jobs until 24 hours before. So we have no way to pack up barriers and actually get the equipment out to the field. So that's what that problem first, tech second approach looks like in real life, especially in more established, I would say, organizations that have just been doing work the way they've been doing it, and no one's actually stirred up that sand and really asked harder questions, which is where I think like a third party perspective can provide some insight.
Sure. So when you're, meeting with clients, is that really where you start the conversation when somebody says, "Oh, we want to use AI"? Do you start with, okay, what problem are you trying to solve? How do you start that conversation?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is listening, right? That director or that leader or that individual practitioner, I know we'll get into this, but I think individual practitioners are really the driving force behind a lot. I think organizations are really lagging. But assume that it is a director, right? I try to let them, kind of convey what they're working on. If sometimes we're not doing anything with their technology stack and it's simply just coaching. And a lot of it is my leadership is telling me we need to do some with AI. We have access to Microsoft Copilot. I know that there's limitations to free, but I don't know if my team is even prepared. If I'm going to shell out this money, what are they capable of doing? And so you learn more about their industry, you learn more about how they do work, what their daily workflows are. We always do accompany our trainings with a team profiling report because I think it's really important for leaders to understand where their team is starting. And some of that is an interview with that leadership to say, do you have an AI governance policy? If we start coaching people and they start to hit walls before you pay for licenses, are you prepared to budget for that? We don't want to get people excited and show them how to use this tool and then they hit a wall because first impressions. So we listen, and that's where we kind of start. If we start thinking about it outside of LLM usage, so the ChatGPTs and Copilot, and we start to think about where AI sits within their technology platforms or other tools that they are looking to procure, like computer vision or wearables or things like that. Then we start to look. I would say that there's a difference between individual enablement and organizational enablement. And so I've seen companies buy computer vision, and then they're like, well, it's not really that good. And I'm like, oh, well, what were you using it for? Was it a PPE issue? Was it, forklift and person interactions? And they're like, oh, well, we want to use it for ergonomics. And I'm like, so you want a camera from, 20 feet up to evaluate ergonomic positions, right? Yeah, that we didn't have a clear defined problem because the technology probably would have led us down a different path. And there are tools purpose built for that, right? And that maybe would have not have been the right one. So you ask questions in a way that is encouraging and also, really starts to make them question, like, why did you think about that and whatnot? So.
All right, now you mentioned there, things like computer vision, LLMs, wearable, these tools take a lot of different forms. But when you think about, on the whole, where do you see AI providing EHS leaders the most value in, improving safety and health?
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about what it doesn't do, but there are definitely a lot of ways that it can help. I mean, obviously, one of those low barriers to entry is the time and administrative savings. I really try to push repeatable process is probably one of the better ways to leverage that. So you'll see even companies are releasing, maybe their safety GPTs. You'll see a lot of free tools kind of coming into the market. I think those are good ways to get exposure. When we're working with teams, we really, really, really try to emphasize capture, curate, share. Which is just once you've done the work of working through a process and that there's a you in another site or another, in another region, when it just needs some slightly different parameters, it's a really, really good way to help each other kind of uplift together. So anything around documentation administrative, I definitely say word of caution around regulatory crosswalks. AI is still heavily hallucination prone. And unless you're working with tools that are specifically trained on the language, on the process, standards are still copywritten, it won't process that, and it will make up things that look that look true. So I always try to push like asking for links, asking for proof. You might find that it's linked to some like guy on Reddit. And those are very, very, very real, especially when you're working within the free version of tools. There's a massive difference between that and purpose-built regulatory technology tools. So one, I don't think anyone's losing their job anytime soon because we haven't quite gotten that right yet. A big one, and one I'm a big fan of, is knowledge retrieval from the field. There are tools out there that the power of voice is something that I think is coming back as we progress with AI as a technology. I use voice, I would say 99% of the time. I work from home, so I can talk and yap as much as I need to. I have simply a hotkey on my desktop, on my keyboard, and anywhere where there's a cursor, I can talk, whether that's replying to an email, sending a LinkedIn message, commenting back on LinkedIn. I know we're all very overwhelmed with AI slop, and I think it's a good way to get our natural human voice back into things. But there are tools to capture that from the field. So voice memos, recordings, there's physical AI note takers. You would be surprised by how much you'll learn from your workforce if you just talk to them and do, I was working with the VP in construction who got one of the AI note takers that I bring to conferences, and that's how he would do his site walks, right? You're engaging with people, you're looking at them, you're not writing down, maybe you need to take a few pictures, but you're just capturing so much more context and nuance. And you also will get a lot further with AI if you can talk through what you're thinking. I know we always say like treat it like an intern, but that truly is like what the context and the nuance that you're going through in your brain if you're trying to explain it to me goes a lot further. One more that I know is like popping up everywhere is hazard identification with photo, video, and I think it's an interesting paradox because I always try to say like who's using it, right? If I'm going to snap a picture and it's going to show me OSHA regulations, going to tell me this is out of compliance, it's going to designate corrective actions, I think that's great. Are we using it as a learning tool or are we using it as a dependency? Are we working with lean teams and now we're relying on our front line? Who's verifying that information is correct? Because if I'm giving this to the front line, I'm not necessarily expecting them to know a specific OSHA regulation. How do they know that it's true? But are we doing a gimbal walk with them and showing them how this technology works and then saying, see, tell me what you see, and then let's verify with that tool? So I kind of have a little bit of a buck with hazard identification. I think it's low-hanging fruit from a technology vendor standpoint, and everyone's selling it. I just ask, what's the purpose? Why do we need that? Why would we put it on our glasses? Smart glasses. I see that. People have asked me about that. Like, why doesn't someone build that? So I think it's interesting, but I'm wondering what's the point. But I do think if you think about it from a 24/7 point of view, when we do talk about computer vision, that could be solving a problem, right? We only see so much. And humans are only capable of reporting so much. So what happens when we turn it on? There's a lot that goes into that. Are we communicating with how the data is being used? Are we doing de-identification? It's not just a light switch on, right? What kind of environments are we working in? Who needs to be informed? How would this data be used versus not be used? So you're definitely not just installing some cameras, layering AI on it, and calling it a day. But I have seen that being used to help support capital investment in machinery or guards or security measures, seeing what's not usually seen, or converting, when you want to change the layout of a warehouse, that's not something that's getting done tomorrow. But if you can show that over the last 6 months, you've had over 50 near misses, that's a different story, right? And you actually have the proof to show that. I think that there's definitely some benefit to that. So I would say that goes into the hazard identification bucket as well. And of course, there's like a lot more, but.
Sure. And going back to like we talked about earlier, what problem are you trying to solve, and not just using technology for the sake of using technology? How are you going to gather and use this data, and how is it helping you create a safer workplace?
Yep.
Switching gears a little bit, I mentioned at the top you are the lead for our AI and safety standards-based user group. That's a new initiative we launched back a few months ago. I wonder if you talk a little bit more about that. What these standards-based user groups are. The focus on AI and safety for your particular group, just to kind of give folks a better idea about what this initiative is all about.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. I would say when I originally got approached to work on this, I was like, what are we doing? AI doesn't have a standard. And it's been really fun to work with the team at ASSP to kind of really shape what this is. So I would say that, it is a platform, a peer-to-peer learning platform, right? That will be augmented in a few ways, the virtual community, I think we're saying at minimum quarterly meetups. I'm trying to push for 4 to 6 weeks. And it's really a way for us to connect and learn from each other. One of the best parts of when I do AI coaching and enablement is to hear what, towards the end of those sessions, is to hear what everyone's working on, where they got roadblocked, what they learned. I love the generational differences and how people learn and, how much more, hesitant people might be and how much harsher on AI that they might be, how many more questions they feel confident talking to their vendor about or asking, well, can it do this and can it do this? And what's working and what's not, right? And where we should be injecting our human technical expertise more. I was on a call this morning with a client and one is working through a new initiative for asset tracking and for capital expenditure projects. And one was like, I built a, hazmat, transport kind of flagger agent. And one of those has a lot more compliance, kind of protocols than the other one. One of them is brainstorming. The other one is like, if we get this wrong, what happens? And it was only through talking as a group that we were able to say like, oh, I think that's a great place to start, but let's make sure we're still doing X, Y, Z, versus that person, that EHS manager working through that alone, fully trusting that he's going to do the right thing. But it's always good to hear from your peers. So I think that that's going to be a big focus. We're going to focus on a few things. We're going to focus on safety leader upskilling and enablement. What does the safety professional need to know going into the next decade? I think we've already seen a shift. I was talking to some recruiters and people from other organizations that help recruit EHS leaders, is how much more often AI aptitude is showing up in job descriptions, for your typical specialist, manager, director. I very much advocate for EHS IT positions. That is the world that I lived in before I started consulting. So having a person who sits within EHS, but speaks tech, right? Can talk to data teams, can talk to IT teams. That typically is the person that's stuck managing the system, but that mindset goes way beyond like being a clicker in a system, right? It is thinking about how digital technology sits within our overall management system for safety. And I think that role actively is popping up a lot more across the domain. And because of the having to live in both worlds, the salary bands are higher. And the job opportunities are very, very niche, but it takes the right kind of person who is kind of a unicorn. So I think it would be interesting to work with the group and figure out what that skill set actually looks like, and how do we develop that both at the college level, continuing education, and what do people need to feel empowered to apply for those positions and not feel left behind. The other thing is organizational readiness. I talked a lot about how there's a difference between AI champions at an individual level and what the organization needs. We actually are already seeing this in the SBUG with who's signing up. So you'll see that a lot of people are signing up as individuals that maybe work at corporations, but they're not quite, this is a pilot kind of exercise right now, so they want to see what they're going to get out of it. But I think it's interesting that we have individuals from large organizations that we all are very familiar with that want to see what's happening so that they can hopefully take that back, right, to their organization and say, hey, this is what we're doing over here. It'd be really great. And I think that's where you start to see those champions emerge. I'm curious in a year whether that table will flip and organizations will see this as an investment that they should be making. Because you can have the greatest argument in the business, a great business case, but if your organization is not bought in on this technology, you're going to be limited as to what you can do. So we'll talk about what organizational readiness looks like, AI governance, which leads into kind of one of the bigger topics. What is responsible use, adoption, ethical use? What are the conversations you should be having before you layer this technology in, turn it on, procure it? How to approach vendor conversations, which you should be looking for, because you can get sold a lot of things right now, and it's not the same as buying like a software with databases and rows, right? You're buying some different data processing agreements, and just feeling comfortable navigating that. And then I would say the last one is governance and standards. And interestingly, with the group, it's been, or are we going to write a standard for AI? I would say not yet. I don't think it's a complete no. I think what it's been really interesting, what's even been surfaced to me is like as different standards are coming up for review, 45,001 is up for review. What needs to be considered from AI? Z10 already has a subcommittee that is thinking about where AI fits in. And I think this group will be able to speak to this various standard committees that ASSP is working on and where AI fits into that topic, whether it's control of hazardous energy, fall protection, I think everyone's going to have like a technology AI section and what needs to be thought about. And I think that's actually a better way to think about it versus being like, here's the standard for AI and safety, even though the tech changes literally every day. So it'll be exciting to work through that. So we'll probably focus on a different topic each quarter, but we'll have kind of subcommittees within the group that will be working on each of those topics throughout the year so that we're constantly making progress. And then hopefully the outcomes of those are case studies and white papers and PSJ articles and just ways to share what we're learning. So I'm excited. There's already like a very enthusiastic group and people are asking me like, what is this thing that we're doing? I want to sign up. So we'll ask me again in 6 months. So we'll see how it's going. But I am very, very excited to dive into all of these different aspects of what I do in my consulting work and figure out how we can learn from each other better and what that looks like.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what these SBugs are all about. And as you know, we have the AI and safety, we have control of hazardous energy and fall protection, standards-based user groups as this pilot program. And if folks want to learn more, just want to mention real quick, you can visit ASSP.org/SBugs. And Arianna, I will give you the last word.
Yeah, no, I think, it's hard to compress what we're talking about here into a short amount of time, but I'm always available. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so people can reach out there to talk through any of this. Join the SBug. This is exactly what we're going to be focused on. So plug there. You will have direct access to me and a whole cohort of people that feel that same enthusiasm, maybe some hesitancy. I would love for some people that are extremely hesitant or have concerns, especially other regions, to join. That's how we make this, figure this thing out together. None of us, I keep saying, don't call it subject matter expert, subject matter lead, because no one is an expert. Very few people are experts on AI right now, so I don't want to take that title because I'm definitely here to learn. But I appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Arianna. I appreciate you coming on. As I said, these tools have tremendous possibility for the EHS field if used in the right way and aimed at solving problems to create safer workplaces. So really appreciate you coming on to share how EHS professionals can do that. So thank you again.
Yeah, this was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.